Tornadoes from Redlands, California, are members of an elite group of Inland Empire musicians. They are perhaps the only IE band to earn a platinum record for a locally recorded effort. Their story begins in the late 1950s when the Sanders cousins, Norm, aka Rolly, and Jesse, first began developing their chops on the guitar with the idea of forming a band. To complete the group, family friend Leonard Delaney came in to play drums, and Rolly's brother Gerald Sanders joined on bass and vocals. Later, George White was recruited to play saxophone. In early 1962, the band traveled to Riverside to record their first single, Busting Surfboards, at William Losey's recording studio. The A-side was written by Rolly Sanders and Leonard Delaney. They borrowed an Ocean sound effects tape from San Bernardino radio station KFXM to add the distinctive crashing waves heard throughout the single. The B-side was Beyond the Surf. Like the A-side, it was an instrumental. In August 1962, the 45 spent 2 weeks at the #1 position on the KFXM Fabulous 59 survey. It was considered a regional hit. It appeared on the national Billboard singles chart for 6 weeks, peaking at the 102 position. The record went international when it crossed the northern border and released in Canada. The tune crossed the Pacific Ocean and released in Australia on the RCA Records label. It crossed the Atlantic Ocean and released in Italy, with a picture sleeve no less. However, there was a problem on the horizon. In December 1962, a British instrumental group, also called the Tornadoes, scored a U.S. #1 hit with the single Telstar. To avoid any possible confusion, the Redlands Tornadoes changed their name to the Hollywood Tornadoes. Their second single, The Grammy Parts 1 and 2, was released in late 1962 with the band's new name. It was written by Rolly Sanders, Leonard Delaney, and George White. In February 1963, the Hollywood Tornadoes played perhaps one of their biggest Inland Empire concerts. The March of Dimes benefit show and dance was held at the Swing Auditorium in San Bernardino. They were considered special guest stars, along with such luminaries as the Beach Boys, Jan and Dean, the Rivingtons, and many others. Headlining was Dick Dale and the Deltones. But there were plenty of other IE events that the band played locally. From charities to parties to dances and birthdays, the band played them all. For their third single, the group's management decided that they should record it at Paul Buff's PAL Studios in Cucamonga, California. Buff is seen here on the left. The engineer for those sessions was a young Frank Zappa on the right. Zappa was living in Ontario, apprenticing and working with Buff to learn about the recording industry. The 1963 single contained the song Moondog on the A-side and The Inebriated Surfer on the B-side, written by Rolly Sanders. Once again, the group went under the name The Hollywood Tornadoes. For their fourth single, the group returned to their original name, The Tornadoes. This release was full of controversy. Once again, it was recorded at PAL Studio and engineered by Frank Zappa. It was almost immediately banned from the radio airwaves because of the B-side, Shootin' Beavers. The song itself was a conventional surf instrumental written by Gerald Sanders. However, the single started with Gerald declaring, "Hey, shoot that beaver!" In the middle of the 45, George exclaimed, "Hey, bag that pelt!" Parents were apparently upset about the title and the phraseology. They complained to radio stations, even though for the most part they weren't even playing the B-side. The Airton label tried to salvage the single by removing the offensive phrases of Shootin' Beavers and retained the original instrumental track. They then retitled the B-side Lightnin'. However, the damage was done and the retooled single was dead on arrival. It was to be the last single to be released by the Tornadoes in the 1960s. Meanwhile, Josie Records released the Tornadoes' first LP in 1963. Today, many critics now consider it to be a classic of the surf instrumental genre. For all intents and purposes, this would normally have been the end of the tale of the Tornadoes, because the band had broken up towards the end of the 1960s. But fate was to intervene some 30 years later and continue their story. In 1993, the Sundays label licensed the Tornadoes album and released it on compact disc. This release led to a renewed interest in the band. So after some 25 years of inactivity, they reunited and began playing concerts. They were invited to play a Battle of the Surf Bands concert held at the Huntington Beach High School football field in June of 1993. Appearing alongside the Tornadoes were Jan and Dean, Dick Dale and the Deltones, the Kingsmen, and the Shantays. Perhaps the biggest break in the career of the Tornadoes was when filmmaker Quentin Tarantino chose to use bustin' surfboards in the soundtrack of his movie Pulp Fiction. The release of the soundtrack sold over 2 million units and earned a Platinum Record Award for the Tornadoes. The song's notoriety made appearances by the band in demand, and they found themselves performing up and down the state. Later in the decade, new members Mike Gooch and Joel Willenbring joined on guitar and saxophone. In 1999, the Sundays label released another Tornadoes CD, Beyond the Surf, a greatest hits collection. In 2000, the Sundays label released the band's first vinyl 45 in over 35 years. The A and B sides were two previously unreleased Link Wray cover tunes that the band recorded back in 1964. Because Frank Zappa engineered many of the Tornadoes' recordings, they were invited to perform at the Zappinale Festival in 2003. The tribute is held annually in Germany to honor the late composer. The band is seen in this photo posing with a bust of Zappa. In August 2009, the Tornadoes were inducted into the Inland Empire Musicians Hall of Fame. The band was recognized for their work and lasting contribution to the IE music scene. Earlier, they were also inducted into the Surf Music Hall of Fame. In 2013, Sundays re-released the Beyond the Surf CD on vinyl. On October 17, 2015, the Tornadoes played the 50th anniversary reunion of the Redlands High School class of 1965. The event took place at the Burridge Mansion in Redlands. While it wasn't announced at the time, this was to be their final performance. The band went out in style as Eric Burden of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame group The Animals was hired to perform a short set backed up by the Tornadoes. The British singer could somewhat be considered an Inland Empire musician, as he has resided in the communities of Palm Springs, Joshua Tree since the late 1960s. Among the songs that were jointly performed were the John Lee Hooker blues classic Boom Boom. The Animals' hit recordings performed were We Gotta Get Out of This Place and the #1 hit House of the Rising Sun. The performance closed with Mustang Sally. In a September 5, 2018 post on the Tornadoes Facebook page, Gerald Saunders made the following announcement. Hello from the Tornadoes. It has been a while since we posted anything to our fans, and I'll try to remedy that now. The bad news first. We lost our original drummer and dear friend, Leonard Delaney, a few years ago to Alzheimer's disease. We continued to play after that for a while, but our last gig was in October 2015. We have received offers to play, and we all miss it dearly, but we all agree it is time to call it a day. It has been a great run, and we appreciate all our loyal fans from countries all over the world, and of course those here in the U.S., and especially here in California. Jesse, Rolly, and myself, Gerald, are all enjoying our retirement, traveling and being with the family, especially our grandkids. We wish you the best and hope to hear from you in the future. In July 2020, another original member of the Tornadoes, Jesse Saunders, passed away. But the music and memories of the Tornadoes live on. Here is a June 2013 performance recorded in downtown Redlands of their biggest hit, Bustin' Surfboards.
that a take?
That was it. 2.5 minutes. Thank you. That's the song that made us famous.